Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
CineSmack contains spoilers of the spoiling type. If you don't want your spoilers spoiled, please turn back now. Otherwise, enjoy the show!
Gentlemen, let's broaden our minds. Lawrence?
Ladies and gentlemen! Welcome to the main event! This is CineSmack! And the winner is...
Hello, CineSmacketeers, and welcome to bout number 101 of CineSmack, the podcast about films by filmmakers. I am your host, Mike Keeler. Joining me tonight is our panel of award-winning judges. First, filmmaker and owner of One Genome Short Productions, the most handsomest woman I ever saw, Roald.
Howdy, partner.
Hey, Gabe. Second, filmmaker and owner of Arizona Ink Studios, Andrew, Mister, you got a lot to learn about people, Zumwalt.
Come on, boys. Andrew's in town. Let's start this ball.
Third, writer, actor, and director Kyle Bucketmouth Fine.
Hey, I resemble that comment. The Wild West. What a great era of American history when it was a race to see whether you could cough or shit yourself to death.
Fourth, filmmaker and owner of Cheshire Moon Films, Tom, the Michael Jeter of CineSmack, Haggis.
All right. No, has anybody seen my hat? I've misplaced my hat and my horse and my clothes.
And your gun.
And we're ready to start the movie.
All right. Well, let's just get down to it. Gotta poke the monkey.
Ladies and gentlemen, cowboys and barmaids, welcome to the main event. It's high noon on the Ponderosa as two modern Western classics shoot it out. The tumbleweed is on standby to see young, goofy Kevin Costner take on a much older, crankier Kevin Costner. Who will stand tall on Main Street and who will get measured for their pine box? In the first corner, from 1985, written by Lawrence and Mark Kasdan, directed by Lawrence Kasdan, starring Kevin Kline, Scott Glenn, and Kevin Costner. Silverado! In the second corner, from 2003, written by Craig Storper, directed by Kevin Costner, starring Robert Duvall, Kevin Costner, and Annette Bening. Open range!
Okay, boys. Let's take it to the first round, which is writing.
Writing. All right, where do we start? Well, let's start at the beginning of Silverado with a kind of a cool little ambush on, what's his name, Scott Glenn, right? So I think that guy has looked old for the past 40 years because he's still doing movies. Okay, this is more of an acting thing, but wow, just always looked old. Silverado, to me, and I love Lawrence Kasdan, Empire Strikes Back, probably one of my top 5 movies of all time. But Silverado strikes me as if you got a book of how to write Westerns for dummies and literally threw up every idea they had, that's kind of Silverado. It's like 2 seasons of a TV show they crammed into 2 hours. And there's just simply not enough fleshing out going on of any of the stories. There's way too many moving parts. I think the entire love story in Silverado happens over the course of maybe 6 or 7 minutes on screen. Kevin Costner, I don't know if his character is written that way or if Kevin Costner is just fucking around and they are unable to control him. But he is a lunatic in this movie, and I don't know if that's written that way. I feel that's a bit off. Open Range, a much simpler tale, much less convoluted, but it does go over the same beats and the same similar things happen over and over again. How many trips to the doctor's house can they make? How many failed starts at a love affair between Annette Bening and Kevin Costner can you have? I mean, it gets really repetitive. To me, the strongest part of Open Range is the shootout, which I think is truly excellent, like super interesting to watch. I really dug that part of the movie. But yeah, just Silverado's too much. Open Range is too little, and both feel too long, in my opinion.
Yeah. The length of the movie is definitely an issue. They're both very long. And I felt like at the beginning of Silverado, I was like, oh, this is interesting. I enjoyed this. I like how they started it. That's a great way to start a movie. With action like that gets you engaged immediately, and you don't know who these people are and why this is happening, and so immediately you're engaged. And then you're introduced to Kevin Kline in the desert, and again it's kind of like, oh, how did he get here? And I'm interested in hearing the story. I want to know how they got to this point. And for a good portion of the movie, I was like, oh, this is interesting. I'm enjoying this. It's well written. I enjoyed the dialogue. I enjoyed a little bit of kind of mystery and figuring out what's happening. But it kind of fell apart about halfway through to me, and it started becoming a little bit disorganized. And there were just a few too many like coincidental overlapping of these stories, like Brian Dennehy he knows Kevin Kline, but he also owns the saloon and he's the sheriff, and there's just like too many coincidental kind of situations happening for me to find it very plausible. And then the love story thing, I was like, what the hell is happening here? Because it seems pretty clear that Rosanna Arquette and Kevin Kline are gonna get together, and then she says something about, I want to work the land, and Kevin Kline's like, fuck that, and here, you can have her, Scott Glenn, and then he kind of shows some interest, and it goes back and forth, and I don't know, that it got really kind of convoluted near the end. So I feel like Silverado started out strong, but kind of left me wanting a little bit.
According to some of the trivia, I don't think that has to deal with the writing, with the whole love story. I believe most of her scenes were left on the cutting room floor.
Oh, really?
To make for time, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was already pretty long. I mean, It was like almost 2 hours and 20 minutes or something.
And from what it sounds like is there was supposed to be more exposition in that whole love triangle. Dealy,
and that maybe would have made sense, but it would have, they cut out maybe a little bit too much of that, because it left it kind of like weird and confusing to me. It's like, well, is anybody really interested in anybody? Is there really a love story here, or is this just kind of for show? And I enjoyed Open Range, but again, I felt like it was maybe a little bit too the pacing was a little slow, and so. And maybe the story wasn't as direct as it could have been. I thought it was a good story. I enjoyed it. I think there were some character development was better. There was an emotional core that I related to, but it was maybe a little bit too long.
I kind of got bogged down in. I mean, I know this was a thing, but kind of like the politics of open range, where it's just like, your cows are eating my grass. And like, sorry, but we can do that. No, I don't want your cows eating my grass. It'll grow back. And by the way, they left fertilizer, so you'll have more grass later. And it's just like, I don't. The whole property rights thing and everything else that it wasn't very interesting to me. And then I know that I don't remember the timing of it, but there was the deal with but it was probably after this movie came out, but there was the deal up in Idaho about the ranchers, and they got in fight with the federal government, and there was the standoff and everything else. And it was kind of the same kind of thing where they're just like, hey, we're ranchers and we want to farm, be on this land. And so there was kind of a connection to current events when it came out, I believe. But now I'm not remembering when that happened.
That was like a couple years ago.
Yeah, that wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
I thought it was like 8-9 years ago. But anyway, regardless, I thought, the thing is, I've kind of like latched on to the Westerns I really, really like. I think Tombstone is really, really great. And these both kind of draw from that old, slow-timey, True Grit type of Western, that things move a little bit slower. And I've gotten to the point where I like my Westerns to move a little bit. I guess with one exception, but I don't know. I think I like Silverado, and Silverado was the first Western I ever saw that I really enjoyed, because it was really a genre I enjoyed up until I was 10 years old. But Silverado was, the one that really kind of introduced me to it and said, no, these can be really good. And so I really like the story in Silverado, and I get. Like Silverado is more like kind of like a chess game, while the guys are kind of moving around and plotting their revenge and that kind of thing. Whereas Open Range, it's really just like two guys, and it's more of a David and Goliath type of story. And there's just, I know some of these cowboys grow up to be stormtroopers because they were just like horrible shots. Like they had Kevin Costner like right in front of them, and it was like they could not hit him. So I don't know. There was story wise. I think so. I like Silverado because it just moves more pieces. And I think it was Gabe that said the pieces aren't very deep, but the characters aren't very deep. But I think that I like the way that the story moves over the 2 hours. Yeah.
All right.
Get it out of your sleep.
Nothing, Andrew?
I don't have anything to add to any of that. I kind of agree with you guys. I watched both movies again. I do love Open Range, and I also really do enjoy watching Silverado.
I pretty much can echo everything that has been said for the most part, because I this is the first time for both movies that I've seen them. I guess my biggest problem with Silverado was I was really confused who was good and who was bad, minus obviously like Kevin Kline and Kevin Costner and Danny Glover. I was like, okay, so are these guys good, or then are they bad, or who? There was just so much, I guess, chess pieces moving around that I didn't know, and I got confused. And maybe that's just because it was a first time watch for me, but whew, I wasn't sure who I was rooting for. And yeah, Open Range, I would definitely say that the shoot at the end was quite astonishing. We'll talk a little bit about that in overview, because there's some really cool stuff about sound. But the actual love story, in my opinion, I would have liked to have seen him just bought the tea set and then that's it, and just left it there, instead of this go back and I'm gonna kiss you and everything is gonna be hunky-dory. It was just very odd, and maybe it would be better with all the fancy extra stuff that was cut, but I don't know. That seemed really weird to me. Yeah, both movies were just kind of for story for me. I've seen better Westerns. I'm sure that's not a popular statement, but
No, it's a statement. I mean, it's an opinion. I mean,
I know.
Are topping anybody's lists of like the best westerns of all time.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting when we get to overall to talk about like the popularity of westerns over time.
Sure.
As well. Why don't we see very many westerns now? And at one time they were really popular, and how are they relevant to culture today and those kinds of things? It'll be interesting to talk about.
I'm also kind of curious. I mean, with Silverado done in '85 and Open Range done in 2003, how the writing was. I mean, it seems like you would have more of a solid writing change, and it felt like they were kind of both spewed out roughly in the same way. And
they're very similar structures.
And maybe that's the way people relate to westerns, is that they actually figure out here is kind of the outline of how a western roughly should go, fit characters in, add some cool plot, and move on. And maybe that's overgeneralizing it, but it just kind of felt that way with. And I mean, I've like Tombstone. We were talking about, or I think Tom mentioned Tombstone. I don't feel like that falls into the same like story outline. I mean, it just feels.
And is that?
I'm not sure why, but I don't know.
Is it maybe because it's based on at least somewhat based on real life events?
Yeah.
Or?
And maybe that's maybe. The other thing I had an interesting issue, maybe not issue, but in Silverado, there was a lot of Irish and English accents, and I question whether that would have been actually true out out in the Wild West.
Yes, it was.
That was kind of really.
Yes.
But people
a lot of immigrants out there.
People in power though, because I guess
you go out and you get your land and people start showing up, and if you rule it with an iron fist, I mean, you could do anything. But you got to remember that we had immigrants coming over the country, and they're like, okay, there's all this free land or this land that you can buy from the government, and it's yours. You own it. You can have it. And people are going out and homesteading, and just like in Silverado, the homesteaders showed up. They were gonna get some land for themselves, and Danny Glover's dad did the same thing. That he actually bought it from there were all kinds going out to the West to make a place for themselves and their family. Yeah.
There you go. I learned a little. Now, I will say I was impressed that they brought in the stereotypical Negro in Silverado, because I know that was a huge popular thing to they would have a lot of that was kind of before the whole slavery really.
No, this was Silverado, I believe, was after. Didn't it happen after the Civil War?
It's an 1880.
Yeah.
Wow, I missed that, didn't I? Okay, well, never mind.
Because most of the westerns, 95% of westerns all happen after the Civil War, right? Like, you have a reason for your antagonist and your protagonist to be going out west. The war's over. They've gotten these skills with guns. So there you go. There's a reason why they're good with guns. And so it makes it easy to write from there on out. Yep, I fought, such and such.
Well, I
with such and such, soldiers, da da da.
Again, then I would say that I'm a little more impressed with the fact that they included more realism in that sense, with more immigrants and having African Americans out there, and being able to incorporate those into the story, because Open Range didn't really have that much.
Michael Gambon was Irish.
Yeah,
he was.
Yeah,
he's the one.
Yeah, he even says it at one
I didn't
point.
come here.
I
I
didn't come all the way
didn't-
from
I
Ireland.
didn't immigrate to lose my land.
Well,
Right.
just real quick about the writing, I said that I did agree with you guys, but thinking back to it, they are Westerns, but they are actually two different Westerns. Okay. You have Silverado, which is the action adventure, like there is the adventure, there's humor, there's, some trials, but they always come out on top, like when they raid the bandits after the homesteaders' money gets stolen. It just, and some of the shots look more of that adventure style shots, like just watching the beginning when they go into the town with the fort and the soldiers are in the background and Kevin Kline sees his horse, like some of those shots were very Indiana Jones-ish looking. And the whole fact that he's, he wants to buy the gun, he finds the gun that he wants, and the guy sells him this piece of crap gun, and he only uses one bullet. Like that's the adventure side, where I believe Open Range is more of a drama, really. You take out that last half hour, which is, I agree with you guys, one of my favorite parts of a lot of movies nowadays, if that makes any sense. But the first half, I mean, that's a drama. These guys are just trying to survive. They get a really rude welcome into town, and it just snowballs from there. There's not a lot of adventure. There is more dramatic parts where the boss is trying to reconcile with Charlie, and they're trying to keep the other two guys from dying, and one dies, and they go. It is kind of convoluted at certain times, but it follows more of a dramatic arc for me than Silverado does. Silverado is more of the boisterous, fun adventure film. Now, yes, there are serious parts in Silverado, but it's still more of an adventure film for me.
Yeah, they have very different tones. They share some very similar beats. Yes. The love story, the land barons, there are lots of similar aspects. So those are kind of part of Western life. The corrupt marshals. Two things strike me: one positive and one negative, I suppose. When I think of writing, the Kevin Costner interaction between him and Robert Duvall before the shootout. I love that. That's really good exposition where you have someone who's an expert and he's explaining to this older, more weathered man what's about to happen and the killers that are, that they're going to freeze and they got to shoot. I love that. I love the writing. I love the delivery. We can talk about that more in acting. The bad thing I would say is that maybe this is a thing just in Western movies, but why would you shoot at your friends to let them know there's danger coming? I don't care how good of a shot you are. Michael Jeter does it. So does Danny Glover. Don't shoot at your friends' heads to warn them that people are coming. You're going to blow your friends' heads off. Guns are not that accurate in the Wild West. Jesus Christ. That drives me nuts.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I agree with you. Oh God, I gotta tell him. Oh God, he's dead.
Oh shit.
Well,
I mean, just yell for Christ's sake. You're gonna shoot him in the face.
I think for me, it's the setup to the shootout is nice because first of all, you feel like you're like, oh, okay, so we're getting to the payoff here. This is why we watched for the last 90 minutes, and then, but I really just like the rest of the dialogue in Open Range. It's so slow and plotting, and maybe this is how people actually talked, and they're going for a sense of realism and stuff. And the stuff between Annette Bening and Kevin Costner is just this. I don't know. It a lot of Open Range is a reason reasons I don't generally like watching westerns. They're just so kind of slow, and it's like I don't know. I've seen westerns that kind of take that pace and take their time getting to where you're going, and there's ones that I like, but yeah, there are parts of Open Range where it's just like, come on, let's make something happen here, and maybe that's it because the Silverado is much more of that action adventure, and we keep mentioning Tombstone, which is really embraces the action adventure western.
Oh, absolutely.
And they just Hollywood the hell out of it.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
And then you get into movies like, The New Magnificent Seven and Hateful Eight, and now you're talking about this whole other kind of subgenre of westerns that really don't connect to John Wayne in any way other than their location, but they're just take place, in the same spot, but they're they really take a totally different approach to western.
Yeah, I would definitely say that love thing. I mean, he fell in love with her the minute he saw her shoulders and her corset.
Baby.
I mean, that was like it was a weird turning point, and again, I don't know that. I think it was just maybe that love part of it was so forced in the writing that made it feel slow because it was just awkward, I think. And you're right, maybe that is more accurate, but it just, for screen, man, it was pretty hard. It was really hard to watch.
Yeah.
Well, Tom, I like the fact, well, everyone's brought up Tombstone, but also Lawrence Kasdan did Wyatt Earp with Kevin Costner, right? And that's like one of those slow draw movies.
Yeah.
It's telling the entire story of Wyatt Earp, where Tombstone is this snapshot, right? It's just essentially cares about Tombstone, hence the name of the movie, right?
Yeah, just that 2 months of his life. So.
Yes. Yeah. So once again, we're going into subgenres of a genre, and then there's different ways to be able to kick a horse, I guess. Maybe. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's go with that.
Tip a cow.
Tip a cow.
Different ways to kick a horse. I like it.
Yeah.
Right.
John Wick's got my
sure
favorite scene of someone getting kicked by a horse.
I did also enjoy. Was it? I think it's Silverado, isn't it? Where Kevin Kline gets? No, it's Robert. No, it is Silverado. Kevin Kline. I'm sorry, Scott Glenn gets on the side of his horse as the horse is shooting.
Yeah.
I realized there's probably some stunts but I mean that was pretty impressive. I'm assuming that he rode. Now how they shot it could have made a big difference, but I thought that was a really neat touch because there are a lot of in westerns, you have your Indians and you have a lot of your cavalry and a lot of your good cowboy, quote unquote cowboys that can ride quite remarkably, and to have that in there I thought was actually pretty cool.
All right.
Wow, I just killed that, didn't I?
I almost said let's save that for a different.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I just figured it was part of the writing of that part. Okay.
No, because we're also doing writing, RIDING.
Oh,
so that's good.
yeah.
Right.
That works. That works.
Right.
All right. Yeah.
Right.
Well, then there was a lot of horses that kicked a lot of people, and that to me is funny as shit. The accuracy to be able to have a horse kick somebody in the head when they're laying on the ground or jumping out of a barn and kick him and knock him out.
Scott Glenn took a real risky route to murder somebody.
Yeah.
That could have gone wrong 1,000
Yeah,
ways.
That's like Fast and Furious in the Old West.
Yeah.
Those horses were drifting.
A lot of stuff. I'm like, man, they used to poke horses in the front just to scare them, and that was it, man.
All right, let's put it to a vote. Kyle.
I just took a bite of a chip. Excuse me. I'm going to vote for Open
Just
Range.
like the Old West.
Just like I got tobacco in my teeth. Open Range.
All right, Open Range. Tom.
Silverado.
Gabe.
And I'm going back and forth. I liked the beginning of Silverado, but it let me down a little bit at the end, so I'm going to go with Open Range.
And Andrew.
I'm definitely going for Open Range, I believe, just for the quality of the shootout at the end and the way that was written.
All right.
Because it wasn't for dialogue.
That's true. All right. Screenwriter of Open Range, Craig Storper, I believe I'm saying his name wrong, wanted to make a movie about, quote, the evolution of violence in the West, unquote. and the planned sequel, as reflected in Silverado's final line, never materialized due to the failure of the film at the box office. There wasn't much.
The failure of the audience to go see it. The film didn't fail. The audience failed.
That's an interesting take.
Well, yeah.
It's
also interesting too.
It
depends on who is measuring failure, and it's pretty harsh with the studios.
Yeah.
If you don't make a certain amount of money, with studios, you may have made back your budget, maybe even had a profit of some sort. But if it's not a certain, if you're not making $1 billion like, Avengers Endgame or whatever, it's a failure.
Well, just real quick, I know this probably belongs in overall or directing or whatever, but the budget for Silverado was $26 million. It grossed $33,200,000 in the U.S.
Give me a sequel for that then. Netflix should pick it up.
I'd be all right with that. And then Open Range was a budget of $22 million, and it grossed across the U.S. $58 million, and worldwide $68 million. So just the fact that you have an older, Kevin Costner's name now comes with, it's a Western with Kevin Costner in it, or he directed it. People are going to go see it just because of Dances with Wolves.
And I would say, I don't know how early in his career Silverado was, but I could tell
he was pretty much unknown.
He was like 30. Yeah, he was young.
That was
so maybe this is just me reading into it, but I felt like, holy shit, he really enjoys this. He really loves this genre, the horses, all of this, because he really looked like he was having fun. And then he goes on his career to do so many Westerns.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, let's move on to our second round, which is acting.
That's a good transition, Kyle, I think, right there.
Yeah, nice job. It's my turn. Shut up.
You're welcome.
I'm just complimenting Kyle.
It says acting Tom, and it doesn't say anything like a pre-comment from Gabe. So here we go. I have to get aggressive because Silverado only has 1 point. I need to score some points here. Look, I don't feel like. Robert Duvall was pretty good in Open Range, but I didn't really think that Kevin Costner brought a whole lot of depth to his character, and Annette Bening's character was fine-ish, I guess. I will give Open Range credit for the fact that they chose someone like Annette Bening and didn't put like Megan Fox in there. Seriously.
I want to see that cut.
Seriously, Kevin Costner usually gets like young. He does generally better, but there's that Hollywood thing of putting a really young actress in with the older actors, and so it was kind of refreshing to see Annette Bening. And but I feel like the cast in Silverado it's so great top to bottom, and I like Diego Luna. I think he's great, but Silverado. Linda Hunt and Jeff Goldblum. It's such a great cast, and they seem to work really well with each other. And
did you say Linda Hunt?
Yeah, Linda Hunt in Silverado. She's the barkeep, dude.
Yes. Gotcha.
Oh, yeah.
I was thinking of what's her name
Ellen
from
Hunt.
Terminator 2. No, Linda Hamilton.
Oh my God!
I'm sorry.
She should do a Western. For sure.
So anyway,
it'd have to be like Westworld though, because she'd have to fight against robots.
Don't forget about John Cleese, Tom.
And John Cleese is in there. So it's the manager from the Cleveland Indians is in there.
Oh yes, I love that, man. That was so great.
Yeah. So we're bank robbers now. So I think I just and it's one of those movies. I think I've probably seen Silverado 15 times, and every time I watch it, there's always this moment of, oh yeah, I forgot they were in this. They're so fantastic. So, and I feel like the people in Silverado, they really look like they're having fun in the movie, and because that's the kind of Western that I prefer. I've seen them where they try to do like a fun adventure Western, and it's not very good, and you can tell that the actors were like hating the whole entire process of shooting outside like that. But the Silverado guys just, I mean, they almost act like children, and dress up, and they're having such a ball playing cowboys. And I just absolutely enjoy it. And I think they did an absolutely wonderful job. So I don't know. Let's vote.
I'm actually going to agree with you, Tom. That I would say my comparison was I was watching Silverado, and it felt like watching the Muppet movie, because every new character they introduced, I was like, oh my God, that's so-and-so. Oh my God, that's that guy. Oh my God. And it kept coming, and the cast is just phenomenal. Jeff Goldblum, I love him as an actor. He just does so weird characters, and he doesn't disappoint at all in Silverado. And I know that there's probably question on whether or not Kevin Costner was just on drugs or out of his mind, or the director was like, I can't pay him, so let him do what he wants or whatever. But I thought his character was hilarious. Like the whole time, like everyone else is wearing a cowboy hat, and Kevin Costner is wearing a little tiny cowboy hat with a string that is super tight around his chin, like he's wearing one of those little kitty elastic band cowboy hats. I'm like, that's hilarious.
His motivation in most scenes seemed to be, you got to get your pull-ups in today.
Yeah.
Because he will not stop hanging from shit.
Well, it was
so
like,
bizarre.
It was like, hey, we
Full
want
energy.
you to act like a 10-year-old pretends to be in a cowboy movie. Go. And I mean, it was just, and he's doing like gymnast things from the rafters with the chick while they were in the barn. He's like spinning around, and like, I'm like, seriously? Like, I will definitely have to say that I enjoyed the cast that they picked that really engaged well. As open range with your peeps, I would definitely say that there was really good interaction, more on a serious level. And maybe they were miserable because everyone was miserable in the West. But, there was definitely a lot of, I would say, tension. But Silverado, I would say, stuck out for me on this one.
Yeah, as far as Kevin Costner is concerned, I'm not a huge fan of Kevin Costner's acting.
Uh-oh.
A lot of times I feel like he's not really that good at delivering the lines. He seems kind of flat. He's not really all that great of an actor. I think he's a pretty good director, actually. But when I saw him in Silverado, I'm like, this is a different Kevin Costner, and I enjoyed that performance, and I thought it was way different for him. Yeah. And it wasn't the normal kind of flat delivery that he has. And I was like kind of surprised with Silverado. I'm like, oh, that's really kind of interesting for Kevin Costner. And you really can't go wrong with that ensemble in Silverado. I mean, how many fantastic actors are in that? I mean, it's a really great ensemble. The flip side of that is it's really hard to argue against Robert Duvall. I really like Robert Duvall, and I really like him in Westerns. You put him in Lonesome Dove and other types of Westerns, and he's just really engaging, and he has this presence on screen. So, I think there's some highlights in Open Range, but man, there's just like a star-studded cast in Silverado, and you feel like sometimes that cast could distract from the story, like you were saying, Andrew. Oh, hey, look, it's Jeff Goldblum, and it's Danny Glover, and it's all these people, but I feel like it never really got to that point. You did have that moment where like, oh, hey, look who it is. But they never really distracted from their characters in the story. And it was really, I mean, you really can't beat an ensemble like that. It's fantastic.
No, but when I saw John Cleese come in, I really wanted him to say something funny.
I know, but you know what? He was one of those characters. I knew he was in it. I hadn't seen it before, but I knew he was in it. And I was a little bit afraid that it would be like, there would be this Monty Python moment that would distract from the rest of the story. But I felt like that never happened. I actually liked his
Actually, it
character.
does.
Sorry, you felt it did. I didn't feel like it did.
There is some Monty Python humor.
Is there a reference to Monty Python?
Yes, I have it in my trivia.
It.
I have it in my trivia.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to spoil it right now.
But I felt like his presence didn't distract from the movie and take you out of it and say, "Oh, this is something else."
He definitely played a much more serious role than he normally does as a sheriff, and did that well.
Yeah, and I felt like there was a little bit more of a comic element to Silverado than there was to Open Range.
Yes,
there was definitely a little room for some levity there.
Hands down.
Yeah, and so he didn't really seem all that out of place as being kind of the trying to be strict but a little bit bumbling kind of sheriff character.
Yeah, when we were watching Silverado, as the opening credits went by, the names kept coming and coming. We're like, holy shit, how many people are in this movie?
Yeah.
It's really crazy. The problem is when you have that many people in a movie that's this scattershot, almost none of them have complete story arcs. And some of them, like Jeff Goldblum, have like 5 minutes in the whole movie. You never understand his motivation or why he's doing what he's doing. You have to kind of piece it all together, and even then, it's real tenuous.
He's slick.
Maybe that's more
He's
of a writing.
Yeah,
but there's nothing to that.
That duster that he had on with the big boa and that.
So he looks cool, yes, but his character is. I mean,
yeah, because
the bad guy in the movie is such a one note. You don't even know him, other than Brian Dennehy, the big bad guy.
Yeah.
You never see him. You don't know anything about him.
Yeah.
I can tell you this. Maybe this is a thing for left for overall, but Silverado isn't even my favorite Kevin Kline Western.
Dude, come on.
I enjoyed Wild Wild West a lot more. I mean, if Silverado would have had a Will Smith single that came along with it, maybe I'd like it more. Maybe you get Danny Glover to do a rap song with DJ Jazzy Jeff.
Wait, what
maybe
about
that's more my thing?
The Fresh Prince of Silverado.
The Fresh Prince of Silverado. Yes, absolutely.
Of the West.
What if Kevin?
The ensemble is really good. They have a great collection of actors in Silverado, but I don't feel like they don't have much and don't get a lot of time to do it. Open Range is a lot of two people talking to each other.
Yes, it is.
Kevin Costner or Robert Duvall and Kevin Costner, but they're great at it.
No,
Robert Duvall is great. I love it. I love Robert Duvall.
You got to be kidding me.
He's
Robert
great.
Duvall is.
I love the
engaging on
dynamic
screen.
between him and Kevin Costner.
I wish you were my grandfather.
That dialogue where they're sitting behind their wagon and they're smoking their cigars and they're eating the chocolate and they're having that is beautiful. It's just beautiful.
Where,
you know what that
he goes
scene is?
into the store and buys all that stuff is fun.
No.
That part,
we can't even afford this chocolate.
This is
I'll take two.
no that scene is like the saltine cracker. Okay, so what that scene is that you haven't eaten in 90 minutes. We're just like, oh my god, Open Range, fucking do something. And they get to that scene and like, oh my god, they're humanizing these guys after 90 minutes and they're eating chocolate. I eat chocolate. And they're smoking cigars. Oh my god, I smoke cigars. And you finally start to relate to them, and it's like going hungry for several days, and somebody gives you a saltine and you're like, oh my god, this must be a townhouse because this is so good. And it's like, no, man, it's just a regular saltine. You're just starving.
Oh, okay.
Well, he has strong feelings about this.
That's why that scene hits, because you're finally
strong ones.
Silverado is like someone shoving runts in your mouth over and over again, but most of the time they're banana. Nobody likes banana runts.
Yeah.
No, it's not. Maybe sweet tarts, but no. I didn't realize. I just looking at, because I always pull up the IMDb when we're doing the show, and I didn't realize that was Richard Jenkins in Silverado. So if you see,
where's Richard Jenkins?
He's Kelly. He's the guy that loses his job at the Midnight Star.
Yes.
So
wow.
He's the guy that shoots almost shoots Brian Dennehy and ends the movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Once again, It's
that doesn't look like him at all. You're right.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, so I just saw that on there, and I was like, oh, look, there's even another name I didn't realize after watching this 15 times. So
another cameo.
Just to be, Richard Jenkins has one of my favorite faces of all time in Step Brothers when they're both crying at the table. And they get their picture taken, and he's just smiling. Oh, sorry, totally non-related. I really like Richard Jenkins. I almost said Leroy Jenkins.
You like
Leroy?
God.
Leroy Jenkins, which is what they do at the end of Open Range. One story, and I don't think I'm stealing any trivia here, but the reason Kevin Costner was in Silverado is that he was actually in The Big Chill, Lawrence Kasdan's movie he did before this, which features a lot of these same actors.
Yep.
And he and his parts got cut out, so he played the Big Chill is about a group of friends coming together after one of their friends dies, and Kevin Costner plays the dead body, but then he also played the character in the flashback scenes, which all got cut from the movie. And Lawrence Kasdan went to him and was like, "Look, I'm really, really sorry. I cut you completely out of the movie, but Silverado, we're doing a Western next." And Kevin Costner's like, "Oh, I love Westerns." And he's like, "Here's the script. You pick a part, any part you want. It's all yours." And so he's like, "Well, I want to play Jake." And so that's how Kevin Costner got to be Jake.
I should have picked the barkeep.
Yeah. Jake was the right
Jeff
part.
Goldblum's girlfriend.
Oh, that'd been great. He could do it. He's a good actor.
He is top notch. But then you just wind up doing like scenes from Open Range.
Yes. Yeah.
I think Gabe made a controversial statement that he prefers Kevin Costner, the director, over Kevin Costner, the actor.
I think so.
He only made 3 movies.
What about when he's directing and acting?
I think Open Range is an example of that. I think it's and this will be for our next category, but I think it's a well-directed movie, but I don't think he is particularly good in his part. He's delivering that whole scene where he's talking about his past. Robert Duvall's character asks about about it, and he's delivering that. He finally breaks down at night and is delivering his history kind of, and I just didn't feel like it was very compelling. It's the kind of thing that should have been really powerful. Like he's this guy has done some really questionable things, but he's thinking about it, and he's and it just didn't. It was like he was just reading the lines. I didn't feel like there was much emotion, or the delivery was all that great. And I like Kevin Costner, but I just don't feel like he's all that dynamic in most of his roles, and that's why I was really surprised. I didn't feel like he was all that. I felt that's why I was surprised with Silverado, because I was like, oh, this is a different Kevin Costner than I'm used to.
Exactly, and I just feel like Kevin Costner, the director. I mean, it's Open Range, The Postman. I mean, and then Dances with Wolves. That's it.
Wolves. Yeah.
Dances with Wolves, and then you're putting that up against, I mean, Bull Durham and Field of Dreams, and I mean, I think he's
even both of those. Bull Durham.
Waterworld.
You know what? Go ahead,
Mr. Brooks.
You know what? He's not that dynamic in Bull Durham. He's not that dynamic in Field of Dreams. He's not even that great, personally, in my opinion, in Dances with Wolves. It's a great movie, but he is not, as an actor, all that great in it.
No, and
that's
like,
just my personal opinion.
I feel
I like him. I like seeing he's an attractive fella, and he's nice to look at on the screen, but I don't feel like he's all that.
Hey,
I feel like he's not all that dynamic as an actor.
Tin Cup, he's great in Tin Cup.
Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
I have.
This is absolutely insane. I can't believe we're actually talking about this.
I have 5 words for you, Gabe.
JFK,
5 words. 5 words.
JFK, he was amazing in JFK.
He what?
JFK, he was great in that. Go ahead, give me your 5 words, Mike.
Hug it, chug it, football.
That's the guy from Zack and Miri Make a Porno, isn't it?
What are you?
What?
That's from Waterworld.
No.
Yeah, that's him from Waterworld.
Yes.
Kevin Costner is really good in 3,000 Miles of Graceland.
That's what I was trying to think of. And I went to
The Wombat.
Yeah.
Greasy.
Yeah.
Beat your team fucking easy. Something like that. Yeah.
That's what I was trying
That's
to
more like he's like acting like Jake.
Yes.
He's like out of his mind in that movie.
He has
Look,
energy.
Hey, real quick, too, before we get too far, I just need to put out Waterworld is not as bad as everybody thinks that it is. All right. There was a whole bunch of media hoopla about cost overruns and shit like that. But the movie on its face, it's actually a really good post-apocalyptic type of movie. It's not as bad as everybody remembers it. And as I start asking around, a ton of people like dog it. They never seen it. They just were like, oh, like, so what was your part you hated the most? I'm like, oh, I never saw it. I'm like, well, then quit talking shit about Waterworld, man, because you didn't fucking watch it.
Where a 6-foot man survives with 1-inch gills. Kind of weird. Doesn't seem like that's enough.
It's evolution.
Also, dry land is not a myth.
Takes
That's
time.
a terrible line reading.
It takes time to evolve.
Dry land is what?
Gills.
Dry land is not a myth. I've seen it. That's a pretty bad line reading in that movie. That's just me. I'm with Gabe now. I only like the movies he directs.
Seriously, he is charismatic on screen, but his delivery is flat. He seems like he's reading the lines, like he just barely memorized them, and he's just like struggling to.
What about the
not
Untouchables?
not in everything, but in a majority of them. And again, that's why I was so surprised in Silverado. Like he was so dynamic and so like crazy and outside of himself. It's like, oh, this is a different Kevin Costner than I'm used to.
No, your whole argument lost weight when you used Bull Durham as an example of him not acting well. Bull Durham is really, really great.
He shouts.
Bull Durham is a good movie, but he is not.
He is fantastic.
No,
he is. You feel so bad for him, man. Like
The Bodyguard.
I've never seen The Bodyguard.
And he's Jonathan Kent in the new, reboot of the Superman group.
Yeah.
Oh boy, he does not do much in that movie though. That's like low level. That's low energy Costner.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get off this topic. I've already had my second stroke of the night. I totally misquoted a line that I was thinking of. So let's put it to a vote. Can you tell I have a 2-year-old? Can you tell I have a 2-year-old that doesn't sleep? Let's put it to a vote. We'll start with Tom.
Can I vote for Bull Durham, or that just screw things up at the end?
That might screw things up in the end.
Fine, Silverado.
Gabe.
Oh, okay. Well, I have to vote for Kevin Costner on one of these. So
you do.
I do, but I really think the ensemble cast in Silverado was great, so I'm going with Silverado.
All right, Andrew.
I would definitely have to agree that the cast is just fabulous in Silverado, and I'm voting just because for Kevin Costner's Jake role, because I want to play Jake because his role was awesome.
You are high energy like Jake, yes.
Woohoo!
Yeah. Yep. I get it. Kyle.
Wild Wild West.
I don't have a spot for that.
I mean, open range.
Wow, wiki wild wild west. Jim West, Desperado, Rough Rider. No, you don't want nada.
Wow, impressive.
There was a great period of time where every Will Smith movie came with a hit single.
Right.
Yeah.
Why doesn't that happen anymore?
I think
stopped. The star of every movie should be contractually required to write and perform the theme song.
When was the last time Will Smith made a good movie, though?
Oh, damn.
That's not a high.
After Earth? When was After Earth?
Ask his wife.
I won't argue
she
that one.
at everything. Like
Bad Boys 2?
I don't know who his reader is, but my God, it's like, dude, read them.
The reader is the guy who goes, "What do you get paid for this?" Oh, that much. Yeah, this one.
Yeah, do that one.
Do this one.
Well,
Bad Boys 2 is the last movie I can remember loving him in.
Yeah, isn't that the whole deal with isn't he a Scientologist? Or is it just
Will Smith?
Yeah.
Will Smith? I thought his wife was.
I don't know. His wife had a brief stint as the lead singer of a heavy metal band that I actually saw live.
Really?
Yes, that was really interesting.
Will Smith's wife?
Yes,
hold on,
Jada
I'm trying-
Pinkett Smith was the lead singer of a heavy metal band. Wicked Wisdom, that was their name. I saw them open up in Omaha at the Cow Palace. They opened up for Nonpoint.
Wait a minute.
That was interesting.
How can they do?
Wow.
How can they be doing Bad Boys 4? They don't have a.
No, they're just calling it Bad Boys for Life.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I know. Oh, Bad Boys for Life is number 3, and Bad Boys
Yeah.
4 is number 4. So they're making 2.
Focus. Winter
Well, and
Storm,
then
Command 2.
Will Smith made the one where he's the con man. That one was pretty good.
Concussion.
He's had some critically acclaimed ones like
Concussion.
Concussion.
Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, Concussion,
Yeah.
they said was awful because it like jerked off the NFL while doing the story.
Yeah, and it wasn't that great. of a-
Seriously, I'm going back. I am now at Pursuit of Happiness, still looking for a good movie.
I want to see.
It's been a while.
I want to see Gemini Man.
Man,
I
All
do
right,
too.
all right. Let's focus. Let's focus.
I'd go see it, but Will Smith is in it.
No, Focus is the movie I was talking about with where he's the con. He's the con man. I'm serious.
You're right. Oh,
Oh
my
my
God,
God.
that's great.
Margot Robbie.
Wow.
Holy shit! All right, we gotta move on. How about that? Originally, the
No,
studio
Move
had
On was the one with Kevin James. No, that's Hitch.
Yeah, Hitch.
originally the studio had Kevin Costner top billed over Robert Duvall, but Costner asked the studio to top bill Duvall instead. John Cleese's first line, here you go, Gabe. What's all this then? Is a Monty Python in-joke, as that line was often uttered by policemen upon entering a scene of a crime on Monty Python's Flying Circus.
Well, that is trivia.
I actually
Yes.
laughed out loud when he came in and said that.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, I guess I haven't watched enough Monty Python recently to catch that. But
And it's just his, I wanted to say real quick, it's his delivery of the lines that make it somewhat funny, right? Like he's very, well, how do you say it? British, right? Like when he's
Right,
delivering,
right.
and when he's sitting there playing chess by himself, you think the
and
other
he
guy's playing.
he's got that other cowboy sitting with him, but he turns the
And then he
board.
flips the board.
Yes,
That was pretty.
that was fantastic. So
Yeah.
That's a great guy.
And that kind of stuff is fun. You know, injecting a little humor into something like that is a lot of fun.
agreed.
But I also feel like they, again, I think they were at risk of these actors like hijacking the tone of the film, and I was surprised that they didn't, because he could have hijacked it and made it seem like this whole Monty Python kind of moment in the
Right.
film. But I didn't feel like that one after.
No.
After I saw it.
No, I didn't either.
All right, let's move on to our third round, directing.
Tom, would you like to do a pre-directing statement?
Kevin Costner is a crap director in Open Range. Take it.
And
Okay.
we're done.
Okay. I don't know that he's a great director in Open Range, but I also know that he's not a great actor in Open Range. Wow. I think for both of these, I think actually the directing is pretty competent for both of these. I felt like the pacing. Well, I don't feel like any was. There are things that kind of let me down as far as directing on both of these. I think the pacing on Open Range was a little bit slow. But a lot of westerns tend to do that. I don't know why. That it seems to be a genre thing where we've talked about it before. They are real. The pacing is really leisurely, and maybe it has something to do with a reference to that period of time. Where there wasn't a lot of hustle and bustle. It wasn't like it was a slower lifestyle then. But I don't know if that's a conscious choice. But a lot of these things, the pacing is just really slow. Silverado started out. I really liked how Silverado started out. It caught me right away at the beginning. It starts with this action. You get introduced to these characters, and you wonder what's happening. You wonder, like, where's this going to go? But then it got kind of messy. About halfway through, I'm like, oh my God, like, how many characters do we have, and how many times are they going to coincidentally cross paths? And you could make an argument, okay, well, there weren't so many people back then, and you're going to cross paths with the same people more often then than you would now, or something. You could make some kind of argument, but it just seemed all too coincidental that all these these varying stories were overlapping, and I felt like it kind of fell apart at the end. The second half of it just felt like disorganized to me, and so I felt like it started out strong and disappointed me at the end. Open Range was consistent throughout.
Consistently crappy.
Slow. Crappy is a harsh word, but it was slow. And there were some questionable things in there, but at least the love story kind of made some sense. At least the director didn't choose to cut out the meaningful parts of the love story so that it didn't make any goddamn sense. And at least at least we had some emotional connection to these characters. We had some story built up around these characters, whereas Silverado was a bunch of like archetypes just thrown together. We've got the crazy young gunman, and we've got the grizzled old gunman, and we've got the bad sheriff, and we don't know anything about any of them. We've got the slick gambler whose name wasn't even as creative. The name, he was a slick gambler, and so what are we gonna name him? We're gonna name him Slick. It's like it fell apart. It started out strong, and they didn't know where to go with it, and it totally fell apart. So
Can I get a hallelujah?
I just don't, I don't know where we're, I don't know what I'm going to vote for yet. I really don't, because neither of them, I felt, from a directing standpoint, was really fantastic. Pacing issues in Open Range and plotting issues in Silverado.
I think I went into Open Range, and I really like Dances with Wolves. I think it's a little overrated. I don't think it's as good as some people probably remember it, but it's remembered fondly, and it came around at just the right time and hit a lot of chords socially with a lot of people. So I think it got elevated. Postman is not that great, and I went into Open Range hoping that I would get more of a Dances with Wolves type Western, and I was just really surprised at like how unorganized Kevin Kline's like camera work was, and just there were just shots that just didn't really make much sense, and missed opportunities left and right. I'm going to say something bad about Silverado too. I think they dropped the ball on cinematography. I mean, one of the things in Westerns is these huge, beautiful, sweeping shots. And I didn't feel like the cinematography in Silverado really lived up to what it could have been in, what we've seen in other Westerns. But Kevin Costner as a director, after Open Range, I was really, really disappointed in his work in it.
Well, I felt both of them had a lot of transition scenes too. And maybe this is a Westerns thing too, where there's a whole bunch of transition scenes where they're like riding off in the open country somewhere, and I felt both of them kind of suffered with that a little bit much. And the Silverado added like this really like big sweeping music to all of this, which on one hand made you want to feel like it was going to be a big adventure, but at the same time nothing was happening. And I think they both
quite match it.
Yeah, it was a little. I didn't hate the music in Silverado. It was just different. It was just really big at times, and it often kind of accompanied these transition scenes where they're riding some distance, in the open country, just doing nothing.
That's like epic music, but there's not anything really epic going on on the screen. I do agree with you, Tom, that in Silverado, they definitely they're missing that Western aspect of huge sweeping vistas. They don't do it very much in Open Range either, or at least as much as I thought they would. They do shoot it sometimes, but when the thrust of the story is free land and the ability to use this land, I mean, it's called
Open Range.
Yeah, right. But they spent a lot of time really close up on Kevin Costner and Robert Duvall.
Yeah.
And not so much on the land around them sometimes. So I do think they definitely missed some opportunities there. I don't know how much Kevin Costner had to get a performance out of Robert Duvall. I think you just point the camera at him and he does what he does and you're good. But I agree with Gabe that Silverado has some serious problems with not knitting all the stories together. I think we were talking about rebooting it or Netflix doing it or something like that. You could do it as a TV show because there are so many small stories and C plots, D plots, E plots, that it would work a lot better than it did throwing the movie together this way. And it's very much directed as an action adventure film, which takes away some of that grand sweeping static scenery and the slowness of, Westerns that we've been talking about. So it feels a bit out of place. It's kind of like an action adventure movie where it just happens to be a Western sometimes. There's lots of chases and funny interactions and, comedy of errors happening and things like that. But I don't know that it necessarily fits the Western tone all the time. And Open Range, I'll say one thing that really struck me was some of the transitions or the ends of scenes, the editing from one scene to the next felt so random.
That bugged
sometimes
me.
it would
That
just
bugged
fade
me.
to black in the middle of a sentence.
Yeah.
Or while Kevin Costner is talking at night when he's telling a story, it just kind of, there's like a fade transition and moves on to something else.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, that feels really awkward. So
they transitioned a lot of time that way. They would just fade to black.
Lots of
come back up.
awkward cuts that just did not feel right.
Yeah, the dissolves in Silverado were very awkward at times too, where they would dissolve from people talking to like cows, and you would have this weird superimposing thing, and I thought that was really bizarre. I pretty much agree with everything you guys have said. The only one big thing, and I don't know if Kevin Costner is the one that actually figured it all out, or if it was his stunt crew or what, but the shootout at the end was very engaging. It was intense. It wasn't one of those weird where they shoot and cut and cut and shoot, and they had very distinct moments. And that may go to 100%, his stunt action crew actually going through and plotting out how everything was going to fall in. But I would feel
know about this.
Okay, well, see, but I mean, I feel that there would be some director input regardless of whoever was designing the way that was going to be blocked. That the director would, but I want to be able to do this and then move to this, and so I feel that, Kevin, at least I would hope, would have had input on it, but I still think that shootout is phenomenal. I really enjoyed it. And again, first time watcher of these two movies. And so I really enjoyed it in that part of it.
They actually did a lot of preparation for that. They used pre-rendering on computers just to show people where they're supposed to be, where the camera's supposed to be. And Costner said that he wanted to shoot him wide. Like most of that gunfight is shot wide because he wanted to just show everyone doing what they're doing instead of being close in on it. There is one thing about that shootout that bothers me. And that's,
I know what it is.
Do you?
Yeah, I know what it is.
Is it the reloading?
Yeah, it's the 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 bullets.
Yes,
yeah.
It's
bullshit.
Now listen, when he asks that guy, "Are you, so and so?" Yeah, I shot your friend or shot the kid, and he just blows him away. Right, like I laugh out loud every time. Right, like it's just joy. But he turns around, and one guy's going back, and then he like unloads the gun. Like there's like 8 shots in it. And I'm like, whoa. That just, I know I'm watching a movie, but it just took me out. It takes me out every time I watch it. And I love that last 30 minutes of that movie. It just takes me out of it.
It does.
Why is that such a problem for Hollywood? Like this is a reoccurring thing in general with Westerns and with shootout movies. And I would say
it happens. Well, it happens in Silverado also. Like if you're counting the guys shooting, it's kind of difficult when you're doing all that, I guess, to say, okay, or maybe it's easier just to take out the stuff. Maybe they do shoot it and then they just take that out. Like it's left on the cutting room floor. They're like, well, if we can trim this down and make it a little quicker, we can do that. So yeah, that bothered me, but I still love that.
I have trivia on that.
Okay, go ahead.
Well,
Do you have the trivia? Do you know the trivia about this? Why he shoots 10 times?
No, go ahead.
Oh, Kevin Costner always wanted to be in a Western where a guy just like completely unloads a gun and then some on somebody.
Oh,
so he left that in for himself because he's like, I've always wanted to just do this, and I'm like, yeah. Well, I've always wanted to fly too, but I'm not going to do it in a Western.
Yeah. So, I mean, you guys were talking there that, you know, there's not a lot of laughing moments in Open Range, where I laugh twice. I laugh once when he shoots the guy like right in the head, takes out their best gun. Right. Yeah. And then the other one is when Robert Duvall shoots through the wall at the guy in the alley. Yeah. When he gives them both barrels, I just, man.
Yeah, and that guy flies.
Yeah.
Hits him with the scatter gun.
Yep, hits him with the scatter gun.
It was great.
Is also some of potentially the issues that we have with the reloading and more bullets than what that gun can hold. Do you also think that might be an editing issue?
That's what I'm saying. That's what
one take.
Yes. Yeah. Tom's right. And if that is trivia about Kevin Costner wanting to do that, then they just did it because he wanted to do it and he wanted to put it in. One thing that bothers me about Silverado, I do like the fact that they all kind of go after their nemesi, right? But I don't know if I like how they approach that. Like they just all kind of go their own ways. Where it's like, shouldn't you guys stick together so you don't actually shoot each other? But, you know, I also get it. I do like that where they each kind of have their own showdowns, right? It's not just all four of them against the other ones. They're separate and they're ending their own stories with that. But that bugged me watching it again. And I don't think that how many times I've seen it before that it actually bugged me until now.
Oh, I see, and I love it because I kind of feel it's it's really funny because it's very Star Warsy, where Luke's gonna go take care of Darth Vader and Han Solo's dealing with Boba Fett and Lando's taking out the Death Star, and it's just kind of everybody's gonna go we're just gonna clean up this whole mess in one big shot. I mean, Kasdan loves doing that kind of thing, so
he does. That's true.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Star Warsy, this will transition in the next section. The music is a little bit. I heard John Williams in some of the music, even though it wasn't him.
In Silverado.
Yeah. I felt like there were.
It really took me to Aaron Copland, and like a beef commercial.
Yeah. I know.
And I don't mean that like in a bad way. I love the Silverado score, and I'm not a score aficionado like some people are, but I watched this and I immediately jumped on iTunes because I didn't have it yet and bought it because I this is fantastic. I love the score from Silverado.
And again, this is probably for our next section, it's very big and very
Now, as far as like open vistas, I feel like Open Range had more of that, considering where they sat, where they made camp, because you could just see for miles, right?
Yeah,
like it just kept going and going and going. But I agree.
That'll be interesting to talk about too, because I don't know if I have a really good conception of what the American West was really like.
It's expansive, right? Like that's why
there's
they have
desert and snow and all this kind of stuff in these movies, and I'm like, what is any of this accurate? Is all of this accurate? I don't know.
Oh yeah, huge, vast, empty areas
like you wouldn't believe.
You got to remember
lots of mountains and passes and other things that collect snow. Yeah, tons.
The U.S. government still owns more land in the West than regular citizens do. That's how expansive it is. Like there
a lot
are
of
just
it's uninhabited or uninhabitable.
And you're talking up in Montana and Wyoming where they have ranches that are thousands, if not almost millions of acres.
Well, yeah, they still do cattle drives out there.
Yeah.
For hundreds of miles.
Yes.
Like it's insane.
And I think that's why, when you guys were talking about showing them riding and stuff and just how monotonous it is showing you just how far away everything is out there. Right? It's the expanse.
Yeah.
But there
are less than 1 million people, I believe, that live in Wyoming. I think Wyoming has less than a million people in it.
But at the same time,
If
that
I'm
would be
remembering correctly.
comparison-wise, showing like a buddy film or a road movie where you have just 20 minutes of them driving, half the people are asleep, the other one's in the back looking at his phone, the other guy's just driving.
Wyoming. Yeah.
I mean, that's what it would be comparable to today. Is you have these scenes where people are traveling for long periods where there's really nothing happening. They're just traveling.
You're Kyle, 577,000.
Yeah, and huge state. Very few
In
people
Alaska,
it.
the largest state in the union, 737,000.
Wow.
Montana only has 1 million people. Like, it's just
Oh yeah.
huge tracts of land, to quote Monty Python. But I'm still going to go back to my defense. They are two different Western movies, but they're still Westerns, and I still enjoy watching them. Right? Like the end. I do agree with you. Open Range does slow down a lot. And I don't know if they did that on purpose, just say, this is how things went, or because it seems like it only happens within like a few days. Same with Silverado. Silverado only happens within a few days. It's not this
Really
week-long journey. That's what it felt like to me rewatching it again.
Yeah, no, it was just it did. I thought you were referring it to the other way because I'm like, it didn't feel like that at all. It felt like it was maybe a week tops.
Yeah, and
there's no way they could have traveled that far.
And the Open Range was, it's still, for me, it goes back to that last half hour.
Yeah,
totally, for me. So anyway, would you guys like? What was that?
Oh, you could basically have the last 30 minutes of them to basically starting at the wagon talking, and you could start there and watch that, and it would be like, oh, that was a really cool Western shootout.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
That could be a short movie in itself.
All right. If you guys don't have anything else to say, let's put it to a vote. We'll start with Gabe.
Yeah, I think Andrew's last statement says something about both of them. Both of them were a little bit long, in my opinion. I'm gonna go with Silverado, I think, in this one.
All right, Andrew.
I'm going to go with Open Range because again, that last shootout was it was just so well done, and whatever I don't know, that was awesome and well shot, and it was so intense, and there we go. All right,
Kyle.
Open Range.
And Tom.
I'm going with Silverado, just because I can hear the DP talking to Kevin and being like, "Hey, while I'm out here, do you want me to get some nice, beautiful, wide vista shots?" And it's like, "No, I'm saving those for the shootout at the end."
We don't have those lenses rented today.
But we have way too many bullets, so we'll be using
let's use those bullets.
10 bullets for every gun.
Well, and I really enjoyed the fact that they were close and they were still missing each other. The guns weren't that accurate back then, right?
I know.
Well, and I think people overestimate how, in that kind of a stressful situation, how accurate people can be shooting a gun too. Yeah. I've seen stuff on TV where it's like actual police car footage, and they're like a couple of feet away from each other, and they miss each other. So it can happen.
Yeah,
it can definitely happen.
All right, with a cast and crew of 204, that's written wrong. Silverado was scheduled to shoot for only 66 days. Principal photography ran for approximately 96 days.
Only 30 days over.
Yeah. There's only one part of the shootout in slow motion in Open Range. Kevin Costner tried to avoid slow motion because it took away from the realism of the battle.
Yeah, I always did enjoy that part of it. I felt like it was more of a realistic kind of showdown kind of thing, where it didn't all happen like in a split second. Who was the fastest draw kind of thing. And I did always enjoy how he just like took out their best gunman right away. Just take that guy out, because that's a smart strategy. It's like, okay, that makes sense, and that they weren't perfectly accurate. They're all good gunmen, but they're under stress. They're at a distance. They're not hitting each other every time.
You know what hits every time? You know what hits every time? The scatter gun.
yeah.
Scattergun.
You can't miss with that. Yeah.
That's right.
Well, I also would say that when they actually have your main characters get wounded and or hit, instead of they shoot everybody and they come out on top.
Yeah.
Woo! What up?
Yeah. Although I thought the injury to Boss, to Robert Duvall's character, was more serious at first.
Yeah, he just kind of
he got shot early in the shootout, and then
he
goes. I thought it was going to be more serious at first, but it turns out not to be. Really.
All right, let's move on to the fourth and final round overall.
Yeah, so we've talked our monkeys off on this one for the overall. There's a couple of points that I want to hit that I want to talk about that I said that I noticed. So with 1985 Silverado, it had, during the shootouts, I noticed your very typical post-production sound effects for guns, and the way that they flared, and maybe this is just a skewing of the time, but compared to like 2003, it actually sounded like they were shooting those guns. Like they had a definite bass to them. They had a physical shot. It wasn't the weird echo, and it seemed like they were actually shooting guns, which I found quite interesting. And maybe, like, again, that may just be a whole time in the ability to be able to do that type of weapon discharge, but it seems very realistic and very well thought out when it came to that. One of the other things I really noticed in Silverado, there was a couple of scenes, specific. One of them was with Danny Glover. One of them was it's Kevin. I think it's Kevin Costner. No, it's Kevin Kline and Scott Glenn, and they're talking, and the lighting is very odd. I thought, like, from the shot, it looked like they were shooting on a blue screen, but then the guys rode away on their horse and they actually rode into the background, and I was like, oh, well, maybe they weren't. And then I noticed in a couple other places where you could definitely tell they were bouncing light onto your main actors, and it made them have weird silhouettes. And I don't know, it was just very bizarre. And those are things that stuck out to me, that I don't know if I would say pull me out, but it's things that I recognize, and I'm like, oh, that's really odd. But again, it may just be a difference between the time periods of when they were actually shot. The other real big point is, so again, with Silverado being older, the change in the way that a Western story was told compared to like 2003, it seems like 2000 or Open Range in 2003 seemed like there was more of a, I don't know, there was more technique involved in actually shooting, whereas Silverado really fell into that old traditional like way. And it was just some really odd moments I felt. But I will say one positive about Silverado is that I did notice there was quite a bit of grain in a lot of shots, especially some of the wider shots that they did do, like in the desert. There was some grain throughout the entire film, and I'm sure it was probably actually shot on film, but it had that more Western-y feel to it because of that, whereas Open Range was perhaps even shot on digital, I'm not sure, but it was much cleaner and much more specific to the look. and less westerny. I guess that old timey westerny kind of feel to it. So those are my technical comments. As to the enjoyment, we've said it again and again that the shootout at the end is great. Some of the dialogue, the very close-up dialogue, was in Open Range is really it's awkward, but yet it feels character based with the story, and I didn't feel pulled out as much because I wasn't following maybe as many characters. Whereas Silverado, there was so many different antagonists and protagonists going on. I again, like I said at the very beginning, I wasn't entirely sure who I was rooting for. The cocoon guy, I can never remember his name.
Brian Dennehy?
Brian Dennehy, yeah.
Like
Wilford Brimley?
No,
they're kind
not the diabetes guy.
Beaters.
Don Amici.
There you
I
go.
always, throughout the entire Silverado, I'm like, oh, he's like kind of he's on the good guy side, and then there was a shift. At the end, he's like, no, I'm actually bad. Yeah, and so I thought that character change following. I mean, because he kind of was buddies, and I mean, he was kind of mean, but he was still, friends out with our main characters until the very end, and then it's like, oh, okay, well, you killed everybody, so, well, I guess you're gonna have to shoot me too then. So, enjoyable. Could have watched the last 30 minutes of Open Range and been good. Silverado was interesting, except for Kevin Costner. Like, I could watch he was just hilarious. Oh my gosh. When they go to the jail for the first time, I was cracking up. All I did was kiss a girl. I just kissed her. So
do you think that shootout has as much gravity without the build-up before it? Without, I mean, obviously, yeah, sure, we can all enjoy just an action sequence, but I mean, does it really have as much impact if we don't know about like how we got here and care about the characters who died to motivate that shooting?
But I think that's kind of a talk to the way that the story kind of, I mean, like you said, we enjoy action, and it pulls out to a very good action moment in the film. I didn't say.
I think of you know what I think of when I think of something very similar, where there's this like build up, and you build these characters that you care about, and then it culminates in this like intense action scene. I think of Unforgiven immediately. Yes. Because Unforgiven is another one of those. I think Unforgiven is a fantastic Western, but it has a lot of the same elements to it. The pacing is very it's Clint Eastwood, and he is very leisurely in just about anything that he does. But the pacing is very leisurely, but you get to know these characters and you care about them, and the shooting, the shootout at the end has so much more gravity to it because of what happened before. It is truly a climactic moment where it's like, okay, well, there's this brief, intense violence that was like that we built up to. It was all pent up anger and violence, and
I can agree to it when you look at it as a whole. I can agree with that 100%. I guess I looked at it as it was just a really awesome point in time in the film.
That's a great part of that movie.
I also found it interesting that Open Range, iconic or ironically to the name, they are mostly in one town for the most of the movie. They don't really open range,
right?
Silverado, they actually, again, we talked about the traveling, and you see the different biomes and the different places actually in the West, and there was snow and deserts and grassland, and there was a lot of thunderstorm, and I guess there was a good thunderstorm actually in Open Range as well. But you see a lot. Yeah, you see a lot more of that travel in that vastness. Whereas Open Range, once they get to the moments of where the story is going to unfold, I mean, they park the wagon and they're pretty much at that town.
Yeah,
and I
which speaking of that vastness, a Clint Eastwood movie just came to mind. Which is the one where it starts out where you see the guy riding in the distance? It's one of the spaghetti westerns, I think. But I don't remember which one. There's a guy riding in the distance on his horse.
Are you thinking of Pale Rider?
Maybe it's Pale Rider. It's just it's way off in the distance, and for a long time he's just riding, and then you hear this gunshot ring out, and he falls off his horse way in the distance.
Oh, boy.
And it has a great like 70s title sequence after that.
Right.
Anyway,
I couldn't tell you.
Sorry.
I wanted to bring up something that I forgot to bring up in directing. All of us have made films. We know how difficult it is to create a natural mood for lighting in certain scenes.
Yep.
One thing that always gets me, and it's funny that Gabe brought up Unforgiven because I always go to Unforgiven about this. The saloons always seem like they have too much light. Like there's no way there's that much light in there. And I always go back to Unforgiven because the scene in that saloon, it's dark, right? Like there is barely any light, and it's so well done. I always go back to that scene whenever I see a saloon in a Western movie, because I'm like, oh, yep, that's way too much light. Like there's too much. And then, and I noticed that in more in Open Range, like when they're at the cafe and the marshal walks in, after they go across the storm surge, there's just so much light. And then Silverado had a day for night shot.
Yeah, I saw that
when Danny Glover's dad gets shot.
Yeah,
and I was like, oh, okay, well, wait a minute, it's supposed to be night. Wait, it was not very well done, and I totally get it. Day for night stuff, I've tried to do it, and it's very difficult.
Yeah, it's hard,
especially back. I mean, not to say back then was that long ago. Of course, it is now, but back in '85. It might have been more difficult. Now, I know back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, it was even more difficult then. And they were just like, yep, well, it's supposed to be nighttime, and it looks like day,
Put a blue filter on it. Let's move on.
That's right, right. And but those were things that stuck out to me. I wanted to bring that up in directing, and I totally forgot about it because I was too worried about Linda Hamilton being in Silverado. So,
what?
Back to the Future 3, when they enter the saloon for the very first time, it is mostly lit by the sunlight, and it's very dark in the saloon, and they carry that on. That was another one I thought of when you were talking about the saloon and Unforgiven.
That's a good point. All right. Does anyone else have anything to add for overall?
No.
Yeah, I'd like to.
Tom's done.
I think you guys will identify with this. I need to address the importance of dogs in these movies, and how I feel like the dogs maybe are more beloved than even humans, and create kind of an emotional response in people when you see their dog get killed in the open range. If somebody shot my dog, I would murder the whole fucking town.
Oh yeah. Well,
sorry. And then they talk about Kevin Kline, like what happened to the dog, and it's his kind of. It has the dogs represent some sort of moral kind of compass for these people.
There's an entire trilogy, if not more, to be made about a guy getting his dog killed and going and killing literally everybody.
So
John Wick.
Exactly. So I think that the moral of the story is you don't kill a man's friends, but definitely do not kill his dog
and his lady. Man, you go after the lady.
Yeah. Woo! Yeah, I think dogs played an important role in both of these movies. Well, because there's a couple of moments in Open Range. You know, there's the part where they have the dog at the beginning and it gets killed by the bad guys, and then he also saves the dog.
For the guy's daughter.
Yeah, he saves that dog from the water,
from drowning,
pushing through the city. Yeah, and then there's definitely talk of it in you don't see the dog and it's not as prominent, but there's definitely talk of what happened to the dog, and that's an emotional, kind of core part of Kevin Kline's character is what happened to the dog. If you don't care about a dog, if you don't have the ethical kind of core to care about another creature, then you are bad. You are evil and you deserve to get gunned down.
Good point. Good point. All right. Let's put it to a vote. There's the third one. Andrew.
I'm going to go with Open Range on this one as well.
All right. Kyle.
I told you why.
You what?
I said I told you why. All you know. Yeah.
Kyle.
Open Range.
Tom.
I think I'm going to go with the better movie, so Silverado.
Mm-hmm. Gabe.
Ooh.
Well, I enjoyed both of these movies, but I think I personally fall into the category of being into the more kind of serious westerns. I enjoyed Silverado; it was a lot of fun, but I think I'm going to go with Open Range.
All right. Let's see. I've got some leftover trivia for you guys. An Open Range, location was so far from civilization that they had to spend $40,000 to build a road just to get there.
Wow.
Production spent over $1 million to build they shot in Canada to build a town from scratch, since Kevin Costner didn't like any of them. To create the flood, the crew pumped 32,000 gallons of water down the street every minute. A massive holding tank at the bottom recycled the water back to the top through underground pipes.
Wow.
Insane.
Did they get an Oscar for like technical achievement for that? That stuff is kind of insane. It's crazy.
The night scenes were difficult to shoot because the sun rose after only 5 hours of darkness.
Up in Canada, they were so far north.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, and that brings me back to the whole question about the American West and what's an accurate, kind of portrayal of the American West. Because I noticed they shot in Canada. I'm like, oh, that's weird. And maybe that's the only place where there's that much open land without anything on it that they can still shoot there, But it's
hard
like
to get places where there aren't visible power lines somewhere.
Right. Sure.
That's really difficult. Or planes flying in the background, any cell towers, anything like that. It's very hard to find things like that.
Wyoming.
Montana, apparently.
Montana, there's nothing.
Yeah, if you think Montana and Wyoming are empty, go up to Canada.
I was going to say.
Yeah, once you get north of most of the cities in Canada, it is nothing.
Well, that's where they shot Brokeback Mountain because of that. Because people actually were like, where's this at in Montana? I need to go there.
The set for Silverado was built for this movie and has since been used in such movies as Young Guns, Wyatt Earp, Last Man Standing, Lonesome Dove, All the Pretty Horses, and Kyle, Wild Wild West.
Yeah.
And the latter film as a reference to co-writer and director Lawrence Kasdan. Kasdan Ironworks can be seen on the side of one of the buildings.
Yeah. Well, it was kind of there was a lot of nepotism in it too. There are a lot of Kasdans in the movie.
Yes.
If you look at the credits.
Yep.
Yeah.
In keeping with his English character, John Cleese is armed with an English Enfield Mark II double-action revolver. Although correct for the time period of the movie, apparently it marks the only appearance of this weapon in an American Western film. I thought that was pretty cool.
He is a terrible shot. For a marshal, he misses everything he shoots at.
He's a sheriff.
Oh, sorry. Well, he's still a terrible shot.
Yeah. Yeah, he couldn't hit the broadside. Well, actually, he might have hit a broadside of a barn.
Might have hit the broadside of a barn.
Yeah.
That's about, if you miss anything, that's about the only thing you're going to hit.
All right, fellas, we're at that time of the night. I'm going to do math, and you guys are going to tell us about your recommendations. We're going to start off with Kyle first.
Ooh, I get to go first. We have not talked about this ahead of time, so I hope I'm not stealing anybody's. But I'm going to recommend the most recent movie I saw, which is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Oh, no.
Oh,
I was
did
going
I
to
really
ask,
say
I was going to ask if anybody had seen it yet, and if it has any relevance to the actual Western.
It actually does, because part of it takes place on Spawn Ranch, which is an old ranch they used to film tons of old Westerns, because it had vast vistas around it that had no visible power lines or tall structures or anything like that, so you could make it passable for the Old West.
They can edit all that out now.
Well, yeah, now they can just digitally, erase it. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is probably my second favorite Quentin Tarantino movie, behind Pulp Fiction. I absolutely loved it. It's 2 hours and 45 minutes. Yeah. When it was over, I could have easily watched another hour of it. Wow. Easily. I loved it. Absolutely adored it. So check it out. It's got some of the greatest Quentin Tarantino hyper-violence you've ever seen. The last chunk of the movie has some crazy violence in it. It makes you laugh because it's so shocking. But it's really well done. I love it. It's great. Check it out.
All right. Thanks, Kyle. Tom?
Hi. Sorry, I was muted. My recommendation is, I believe I've recommended Assassination of Jesse James before, so I'm actually going to go with The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, which is the Coen Brothers Western from last year.
Yes.
It's really fantastic. It's actually an anthology, so it's actually like 6 short films, 6 short Westerns. It's really, really well done, and the 6 stories that they're telling are really kind of unlike a lot of the, so when you watch Silverado, you're kind of can be like, oh, this story is similar to this, and Open Range is kind of, echoes from this other movie, but the 6 stories are so unique in Buster Scruggs, and I think it's on Netflix, so it's really easy. It's really accessible and nominated for a couple of Academy Awards, but I would say, check it out. The first one is a little odd. I mean, it's Coen Brothers, so you have to expect a little bit of peculiarity to their films, but it's definitely worth the ride, and it's really fun afterwards to kind of talk about which one was your favorite, because it's pretty divisive. People tend to gravitate to one or two of the 6. So,
agreed.
Cool.
Gabe?
I'm going to recommend a movie that was recommended to me. I was asking around about Westerns, and a friend recommended a movie called The Oxbow Incident from 1942. And it has Henry Fonda in it, and Anthony Quinn, who has a small part but is really fantastic. Harry Morgan from MASH is in it. And it's really one of the main differences is that it's about half as long as any of the films we watched for the show tonight. It's very quick. It's very short. But it's really interesting because I've always felt like Westerns and sci-fi movies are a good kind of canvas for exploring things like moral and ethical issues and that kind of thing. And this Western does just that. It's about a lynch mob that goes out to find the killers of a popular cattleman in the area, and they don't know for sure if they've got the right people or not, and what they choose to do. It's an older film. The acting and the pacing are interesting, but it was really kind of an enjoyable watch. And again, it's only half the length of what we watched. It's you'll sit through it and go, is this even a full movie? Because it's just a little over an hour long, probably. But it was really well done. So if you get a chance, look up the Oxbow incident.
All right. Thanks, Gabe. Andrew.
I'm actually going to pull out a little post-Western, but still somewhat in the Western genre. It's definitely leaping into a little of the mob action, but that movie is Lawless. It's from 2012, and it's based on a true story about the Bondurant brothers and doing bootlegging during the Depression, and them making their moonshine. And it's got Shia LaBeouf and Tom Hardy and Guy Pearce in it, and it's not, I don't know, it's not slow, it's intense, it's action packed. It's really well done. I looked up the actual story, and it's pretty close. There are some definite draws from the real life biography that actually happened, but it's quite an intense movie. It's really good. It's a fun watch. It's got some neat shootouts, lots of action. Yeah, and it's a little bit different character basis for some of those actors. So check it out, Lawless from 2012.
Cool. All right. Well, mine is from 1969, directed by Sam Peckinpah.
Hey-o.
Stars William Holden, Ernest Borgnine, Robert Ryan. Oh boy, Ben Johnson. If you have ever watched a Western in your life, you would notice every single one of these guys. Warren Oates. It is, oh God, I can keep going. I'm not. It's essentially, it's an aging group of outlaws looking for one last big score as the traditional quote unquote American West is disappearing around them. And if you want to talk about shootouts at the end of a film, you need to watch The Wild Bunch. It is insane. The blood, blood doesn't look that real. It looks like someone splashed red paint on them, but it is pretty intense towards the end. So check out The Wild Bunch from 1969. Now,
Hey.
Let's poke the monkey, find out who won.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? Your winner by decision is Open Running!
Silverado had moments, but it just couldn't put it all together.
All right.
Wow.
We're all tired. We're still we're still recuperating from our 3-hour binge-a-thon of Spielberg films.
It's quite a bit.
Where can people find you, Kyle?
Still on Twitter at Choke Jerkin and Tyrannosaurus Sex. You can hit me up there, slide into my DMs. Other than that, I don't really know. Yeah, I don't have much of a social presence.
All right. Tom had to run. You can check out his stuff at CheshireMoonFilms.com. And we'll go to Gabe.
Yeah, I'd also like to recommend that you go. I assume Tom can verify this later. I assume it's on YouTube. He participated in the 48-hour film project this year, he made it. He made a charming, funny, really fun, entertaining film this year, and you should definitely look it up on YouTube. I don't know if it's out there yet. He'll have to answer that in detail, but they did a great job this year, and it was really a fun film. And you can check us out at onegenomeshort.com.
It was he and his family.
Yeah, his kids, and they do a really good job. The kids are great in it. It's called what was it called? Do you remember, Mike?
I don't remember.
It's
off the top of my head.
Playing for Keeps.
Yes.
Playing for Keeps. That's it. Yep, Playing for Keeps.
Nice.
Look it up. It was really well done.
And what was the name of yours? You guys made a 48-hour film this year.
We did. Ours was called Love Chucks, as in like nunchucks, but
Nice.
Love chocolate. LUV.
All right. Andrew.
The easiest place is ArizonaInkStudios.com. That's Arizona INK Studios.com. And you can check out all of our social presences there. And also check out links to all of the podcasts so you can have another way of getting to everything there. And also all of our cool films that we have done. So, yeah, there you go.
All right. Well, we would appreciate it if you could leave us a review on iTunes or whatever podcasting service you use. You can contact us at cinesmack@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Just search Cinesmack. For September, we're going back to the 70s and watch a game between Slapshot and Bad News Bears. For Kyle, Tom, Gabe, Andrew, and myself, thanks for listening, and go catch a flick.
You the one killed our friend?
That's right. I shot the boy too, and I enjoyed it.
This has been a test of the Southsider Studios podcast system. This was only a test. If this were a true lack of entertainment, your head would explode. Go to iTunes and subscribe to our feed. Just search Southsider Studios.
It can get lonely climbing Mount McKinley, so to entertain myself, I go to ChumbaCasino.com. At Chumba Casino, I can play hundreds of online casino-style games for free, like online slots, bingo, slingo, and more. Plus, I get a daily login bonus. It's just too bad that up here, I don't have anyone to share my excitement with. Woohoo!
Live the Chumba life. Anytime, anywhere. Play for free now at ChumbaCasino.com.
VGW Group. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.